day, and we welcome you to a place called Through, where we're broadcasting from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. I am the host of a place called Through in Inspirational Moments, and I am Evangelist Patricia Wade Goings. I am your health and wellness and life coach, and I also am a prayer intercessor. But not about me, it's all about you, and that's why we're here today to share this inspirational story. As we grow up, we're so inspired and we learn from our families, our moms and our dads. And that just takes us through our lives, the things that we learn early on in life. It impacts how we grow up and what we become and how we think about things. So today we're honored to have as our guest Miss Charlene Benson, who's going to share her story of a dysfunctional family and how she got away through so many of the hurdles that had occurred to her. But I just want to tell you that we do this because of you. Our mission is to empower you, to encourage you, and to inspire you. And so we do this globally, all because of you and for you. So we ask that you continue to sow those seeds into this ministry. And if you haven't had that opportunity yet, please sow that seed at wytv7.org. So we want to jump right on in today and welcome our guest today to a place called Through, Miss Charlene Benson. We welcome you here to this place called Through.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and excited to share what God has taught me through the struggles that I've been through.
Well, again, we do thank you, and we're going to go ahead and jump right on into the story. As we started off stating that, we all learn from our family. First thing is your mom and your dad, be it both of them or just one of them. But that's the first model that we have. As children growing up, we tend to look at our moms, most of them who are staying home. They teach us the way of life, way of living. So talk to us about what was your family life like growing up for you?
Okay. That's true for every family, I believe. There's good and bad. And there were a lot of good things that my parents shared with me about work ethic and a solid faith in God and a variety of things like that. And so there were many positive things, but what I want to focus on today is the things that didn't go so well so that I can share what I learned from those things. And so as a child growing up, I noticed my dad was a dad that just yelled a lot. I didn't see that as being abusive. That was just my experience. He yelled and there were negative things that were said. It tended to be very critical. My mom was more withdrawn, quiet. She kind of expected my dad to know what she wanted. She was never really out, she never expressed outwardly what she wanted. And then I witnessed her being disappointed often that she didn't get what she wanted. She would be all about what dad wanted and readily give up what she wanted. And so that was the model that I witnessed growing up as a child. And we all witness our parents as models for us growing up.
And so you had other siblings that were in the home with you too, and they exemplified that same model too. Is that correct? How was that handed down to them?
That's exactly right. So there were five of us. I had an older sister. I was born 2 years later. I had a third brother that was born 2 years after me who had hemophilia, and that played a significant role in my life because we joked about him being in the hospital more than he was at home during childhood, which was pretty true. He had a bleeder's disease so that his blood wouldn't clot. And so that ended up with him being in a hospital, often 4 hours away from home. And my parents being on a farm and having to take care of him and us, often he was left in the hospital by himself. And but because he had so many medical needs, often as a 2-year-old, my needs were not attended to because his needs were more critical. And then I had two other brothers, a normal brother a year and a half after that brother, and then a baby brother 5 years later. And so we were a staunch German family where I love you was never expressed in our family. It was expressed through deeds, not words. And we just focused on daily things that we needed to do. We didn't focus on the future.
And so as growing up, okay, here you are in a situation, you have, your parents are home, your dad's the one that's kind of like dictating because of his yelling and screaming, and the mom, on the other hand, is kind of like accepting it, but on one hand, she's like, okay, questioning it. So now you and your siblings are growing up to believe that this is the right way to go. But then, tragically, the loss of your brother, and then so you began to lean and have a different relationship with another family member who you became really, strongly related to.
Right. As a child growing up, then because of those frequent hospital stays, my grandmother, who lived just a quarter mile up the road, would take care of us. And so she became my emotional center. Of course, I was not unaware of all of that as a child growing up. It's only on reflecting, looking back, how those relationships played such a key role. But when I was a freshman in high school, then she suddenly died of a heart attack. One day she was fine, the next day she was gone. And then 5 years later, or 4 years later, right after I graduated high school, my 5-year-old brother, he was 9 years old. He was 9 years old when he died. I was 18. He was suddenly hit by a car and killed. And again, one day he was fine, and the next day he was gone. And without my being fully aware of it at the time, those were the two most critical relationships in my life, the people that I loved the deepest. And I was devastated by those losses.
Oh, and I'm sorry to hear about your losses, but again, because of the fact that, as we grow up as children, what happens at home, role models for us. That's what we learn, and that's what we go to school. Oh, my dad is such and such, or my mom does this, that, and the other. And as children, we began to even play this game of house. So we are modeling ourselves after what's going on in our household. So, but you had so many other dynamic, dysfunctional things happening in your life. What was your life like in terms of school and church life?
So my family went to church every Sunday. So we were, I grew up, I always believed in God, and school for the most part was a very positive experience for me. I did pretty well in school. And so going off to college was a really positive thing. But at the point of my youngest brother's death, it created a faith crisis for me. I'd seen so much suffering with my brother who had hemophilia, and then the death. And it was like, well, if this is all there is to life, then I'm checking out, because I don't have the answers. The church that I was going to didn't seem to offer answers for the future of what God's kingdom was about. And so I started searching for God in other places.
And so, to back to your parents, because of the fact that you all went to church, and even with, your dad being, the yeller or screaming, the passive person here, even still going to church did not alter or change his behavior?
No, they didn't really. I think their faith was a quiet faith. It's like they believed in God, but it didn't result in massive changes of behavior. Occasionally they would read the Bible, but it was my dad. I think I can remember 2 or 3 times when we got the Bible out as a family and tried to read it starting in Genesis. And when we got to the begets, that was about the end of it. And so it's like, kind of given up in frustration, but they believed in God, but it just wasn't an active lived out faith in that way.
So it was just like when you would go to school and, the kids always do this show and tell. So we go to church to show that we're actually going to church. But then, back home, the life is telling a whole different scenario here.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. That I never put it in those or thought of it in those terms, but it's like, yeah, the messages that they were getting at church weren't resulting in a changed life.
Okay, well, we want you to keep that thought right there, because we're getting ready to take a commercial break. And after that commercial break, we're going to dive back on into the relationship and how that dysfunction in your belief had turned into a whole different perspective on life. So if you'll keep that thought in your mind, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. Once again, we are Patricia Wade Goings, and we're the host of A Place Called Through on these inspirational moments, where we're broadcasting today live from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Stay tuned.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
Good day and welcome back to A Place Called Through, where I am your host, Evangelist Patricia Wade Goings. And again, we are broadcasting from WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network with our guest, Ms. Charlene Benson, who has been sharing her story thus far with us about growing up in a very dysfunctional family. You know, as we grow up, as we stated earlier in the show, that we model ourselves. Our parents are our examples. You know, sometimes it may be even a grandparent, it may be an aunt or an uncle. Those closest to you are those people who children, we as growing up as children, have modeled ourselves. So with Ms. Benson, she's had a unique situation. You know, she lost one of her brothers early. Her father was, you know, more of the passive person doing the yelling and the screaming. And the mom, you know, kind of said, okay, but no, they were a church family, but it was show and tell time. I went to church because, but then when I got home, you know, that because became something else. So we want to pick up with Miss Benson too, as she has formed, you know, this unique relationship now with her grandmother, who also now, you know, through horrific situations, the grandmother is no longer in her life. But now there comes a time where she had to grow up real fast, I assume. And then now this change when you go to school and life begins to show you a different light. So shed some light with our listeners and our viewers on this transition that you made, because at one point you had given up yourself. So talk to us from that point.
Okay, well, after my brother was killed, it was incredibly painful to me, and without being fully consciously aware of it, I made a vow in my heart saying that I'm never going to let anybody in again after the pain of those two losses of my grandmother and my brother. And so then I got married a couple years after that, but I fully I had my heart was closed up to love. I wasn't going to let anybody in because it was the fear of losing that person was so intense and so deep, although I didn't know that that was what was motivating me. So fast forward a number of years, in our marriage, quickly became unhappy with our relationship. My husband would try to figure out what was wrong with me, and I could not express how I really felt because I didn't even have words for them. My mother didn't have words to express how she felt to my dad, and a strong message that I had internalized was what I thought and felt didn't matter. And so living as though that lie was true, then I could not vocalize what was bothering me. And so that led to a very unhappy marriage. My husband, at some level, became angry like my dad was, and I was more the withdrawn person like my mother was, and we replicated the dynamic.
And so that pattern did follow, as we stated, from your childhood on to adulthood into your marriage. Whereas now, okay, you realizing, okay, something is different about this. Something has to happen. Something has to change. But for you, you became more even determined to make this something different happen and become reality for you. And that was too, that, like you stated before, going to church became the difference for you, because that's kind of like was your guiding tool. Now you're getting more into the Word of God and you're learning some things. So talk to us real quickly about this transformation that has happened to you.
Okay, so when I went off to college, I in earnest sought a new church, something that would give me hope and answers for the pain that I was experiencing. And I found a legalistic church that my mother had introduced me to. My sister was already attending, but it gave hope for the kingdom of God in verses like Isaiah 65 and Isaiah 35, Revelation 21, that spoke of the kingdom of God in very real terms, very earthly terms, that just gave me hope of seeing my brother and my grandmother again. And this church was very devoted to studying the Bible every day and praying. And so that being our sole source. And as time went on, God began to reveal to me patterns. And 30 years after I went to college the first time, I went back to school to become a counselor, because I realized that the counselor that I had received to help me deal with my marriage issues and the struggle that I was having was so beneficial to me that I wanted to be that for other people as well. So I went back to school and became a licensed professional counselor, and then started seeing, not only in my own life was I seeing these patterns, but I was seeing them, the same patterns, with clients that I was counseling.
And you had to go through that to get through that. And now you're helping other people who are going through the same dynamics that you went through, which, we commend you for doing that, because, you could have been one of these people that just gave up totally, as at one point you were ready to, because you were like, okay, God, where are you? What are you doing? And who are you? But you continued on, even though you had other dysfunctional relationships and marriages because of your past, yet you're still allowing God to use you as a vehicle. So we commend you for doing that, and your strength and your ability to come through. So talk to us, because we're running out of time here, real quickly, about how can you be of a help, and how are you helping other people that are going through this same thing?
So I ended up writing a book called Unstuck: Move from Powerless to Empowered in Your Relationships. And then I just finished a study guide this summer called Unstuck Study Guide. But as I outlined the patterns that I discovered in my life and the life of other people, and I put it in the metaphor of a ditch, and being stuck in a ditch. And so I saw myself as being others focused, where I would readily give up what I wanted. And then I saw my husband, my dad, and other relationships as being me focused, where they would forget to think about other people. And I realized that each of those ditches was nothing more than an extreme driven out of fear and feeling powerless to do anything else. So my dad's yelling, and my mother's withdrawing and being silent and giving up what she wanted. All of those were behaviors, automatic, pre-programmed reactions that they didn't have to think about, and because they didn't know what else to do. So that I call those ditchy behaviors. And our goal is to be on the road where we are able to be balanced and think of me and the other person equally at the same time.
And that's awesome. Unfortunately, our clock is really winding down very fast here. So that our listeners and our viewers want to reach out to you to get a copy of your book, tell them about your blogs, your website, and you have about a minute and a half to get that information out, a phone number, in case they want to contact you for counseling. Please share that with us, if you will.
Okay, yes. My email address is cbensonbooks@gmail.com. That's cbensonbooks@gmail.com. I'm currently working on my website, so currently it's not up. You could reach me at 303-898-7786. Or I'm available at C Benson Books. My website will be cbensonbooks.com. You also can connect with me on Facebook, Charlene Benson, author. And so those are ways that you can get a hold of me. I am retiring the end of December this year, so I'm not taking on any new clients, but I would be happy to talk to you if you have any questions about Unstuck or the Unstuck Study Guide. It is available on Amazon, Goodreads, and Barnes & Noble. So you can purchase the book there, or if you'd like a signed copy, you can order one from me. So I'd be happy to connect with you.
That's awesome, and we thank you, because our clock has wind down. But we want to just thank you, Ms. Benson, for sharing your story, your inspirational story here with us today at a place called Through Inspirational Moments on WYTV7 Community Broadcasters Network. To our listeners and our viewers, we know that you like this story, and we're sure that you've enjoyed the others. So if you have an inspirational story and you want to share it with us, reach out to me, the host, Patricia Wade Goings, and you can reach me at pgoingswp@gmail.com. Area code 843-608-9744 or area code 843-812-1958. Website www.willpowerthecalltoriseabove.org for upcoming events and activities. We also have a midnight prayer cry. We also are the author of Willpower, The Call to Rise Above. Grab that book on Amazon and all online stores. Also, if you like prayer, submit your prayer requests at our website. Again, we want to thank you, Ms. Benson, for being our guest today. here at A Place Called Through on those inspirational moments. And we hope that you've been inspired and encouraged and also empowered wholeheartedly today by sharing this story with our guests and our listeners. Stay tuned for more. We'll be back again another day.